Cypography is changing. Why is it changing?
When Elle put that question to us on the Gaz shoot, would people...
Yes. That's the take.
That fear of staying the same, that fear of failure, is what has led to where we are now.
There were moments when I wondered if what we were doing was good enough.
We've pretty much delivered an hour at least every single week for the last 6 years. I ended up in a bit of a position where I didn't really want to do it anymore.
I remember walking to the top of the lake on the phone and he relayed this, and I've got to admit, I felt a bit shaken by it and a little bit of trepidation about what the future held.
You cannot keep doing the same thing. Something new, something exciting, something a bit different is always good.
It was on that trip actually that Elliot told me about his plans to change Cypography.
This was the best kind of content that we could make.
Didn't even give it a second's thought, but little did I know in the background things were already in motion.
I've been from pillar to post trying to work out what it is we need to do.
We want to show it as it happens and it's real.
We want to produce the very best content we can. Eventually, I had the idea that birthed what will become the new Cypography.
We had a bit of a discussion about it, but I don't recall anyone taking it particularly seriously.
What if we only made... We were on an underwater shoot back in March.
Down at Linear Fisheries with Gaz Fareham, when Elle, out of the blue, came out with something that took us all aback.
What if we only made underwater films?
Is it?
You've got one, mate, you've got one.
Yeah. I've gathered. Mate, I'm astonished that they've been in all afternoon and that zig's not gone. Right in the middle.
Yeah, he's looking at it now, he's like,
Big old tail on him. Wasn't coming off though, was he?
Cypography is changing. Why is it changing? Several reasons. Now, we've been making carp fishing videos for over 6 years, and you cannot keep doing the same thing. It's not good in many ways. On a personal level, repetition gets boring, and I think when you're delivering a service to people who are going to watch our films, it is important that we are always striving to improve what we do and keep things changing. We've always wanted to do that, we've always tried to do that, and it's important to us. The second reason, as time has gone on, there is a lot more competition for views. There are lots more videos going out, and in recent years, the amount of content delivered by big companies has massively increased, and that is direct competition for us. These films are created by top-level cameramen, they've got great anglers in them, and a lot of time and effort goes into these films, as it should. For us at Cypography, because we create so much content, and we've pretty much delivered an hour at least every single week for the last 6 years, you know, a very long time of producing a hell of a lot of content. When you are on the hamster wheel like that, it becomes very hard to compete with people who have got much longer and more resource to create, ultimately, better films. We want to produce the very best content we can. And because of the position we have been in, with the amount of content that we have promised people, that's become very hard to compete with the likes of Corda, Nash, Sticky Baits, etc. You know, there's great films going out all the time, and it started to get to the point where collectively we felt we could make better content, but in order to do so, things would have to change.
I think you can be too close to things at times, and maybe it's my personality, but there were moments when I wondered if what we were doing was good enough. I did say that to Elle. When you're close to something, when you're working at the coalface, when you're out shooting, you kind of can't escape that the end product is very much the kind of accumulation of all the stuff that you're putting in. And when you see stuff elsewhere which is so well put together, where every single element of it is perfectly realised because there is time to do that, then doubts do creep in.
One thing we have always done, and something we will continue to do, is make content that we want to make. We've never been beholden to anybody. We've never made a film that we're not proud of. We've never made a film that we didn't want to produce. You know, it has always been a case of coming up with our own ideas, producing the content, and hoping that people will enjoy it. And that's a nice way to work, of course. As our audience has grown, the need to offer a more diverse content style has also grown, and we've started to dive into different areas. And there's been lots of times over the years people would come up to me and they would say, why don't you do more stuff about rigs, more stuff about bait, more stuff at day ticket lakes? You'll get loads more members if you do that. But ultimately, we didn't really want to produce that content, certainly for the first few years. As time went on, there's only a certain amount of big carp films you can make before even that starts to get boring. So we then began to go into different areas, offer a broader range of content spanning all sorts of different places, all sorts of different fishing styles, everything from Europe to a just standard day ticket lake back here in the UK. And we ended up in a position where we're trying to please everybody, but as you know, you can never please everybody. However, we've always tried to do that, and actually the thought of going to a lake where you can get a few bites is actually quite nice. A lot of the filming we've done over the years, you're scratching for one bite all the time. So to go and do a different style of content, an action-packed day at a day ticket lake, you know, it was something that would please our members or a certain part of our membership base, and it also offered something new for us. And as I keep reverting back to, something new, something exciting, something a bit different is always good.
If you're doing your best to make the best films that are possible in the time that you have, there is no real downtime apart from when you're asleep. And even when you're asleep on a shoot, you've got to be ready to get up because the bar has been raised to such an extent that nothing can be missed now. And that is a significant physical toll. I don't care who you are. You could say it's a young man's game, being a cameraman, but if you're not there to capture the moment, especially what we're trying to do, which is ostensibly it's documentary. We want to show it as it happens and it's real. In order to do that, that's a big effort. And as the end of last year sort of rolled around, I found myself doing a lot more shoots, just the way that the calendar panned out, back to back to back, going again, and they didn't always work out. And if they didn't work out, you felt like your energies were getting poured into something which was ultimately going to be not quite what it could be. And on the flip side, I've got a little daughter who was 6 at the time, and she was starting to really notice when I was away. And I guess that for the first time I was starting to think I didn't want to be away either as much. I did want to see her, and while she still wanted to be around us before she got sort of ensconced with mates and devices and, you know, whatever happens later on in childhood, this little moment seemed like a sweet spot, and I didn't want to miss it.
I would be lying if I said that as more and more subscription companies appeared, it didn't bother me, because it did. You know, when you start off, the first person that does it, it really gets to you. You feel, oh, they've copied us. Then someone else does it, then someone else does it. And eventually it becomes a norm. And you have two choices really. And this is something I've certainly learned. You can either let it eat you up, or you can use that just to improve yourself. At the end of the day, the more competition you have in whatever it is that you do, the better. It will only make you better as long as you're willing to push the boundaries and try to be better, you know, and we're not afraid of doing that. We never have been, we never will be. And over the last 18 months, I have known in the back of my mind that something needs to change. And I've been here, there and everywhere with this. I've come up with God knows how many ideas. We nearly went down a road that I'm glad we never went down, let's just put it that way. But I've been from pillar to post, trying to work out what it is we need to do, what it is we can do that suits everybody within the company, the people around us. You know, what can we do to change what we are doing? And eventually I had the idea that birthed what will become the new Cypography.
When Elle put that question to us on the Gaz shoot, would people be happy with just underwater? I think we had a bit of a discussion about it, but I don't recall anyone taking it particularly seriously. And the shoot went on, we wrapped it, and I went home, didn't even give it a second's thought, but little did I know in the background things were already in motion.
There was a time where I found myself in a position where I wasn't out filming, I wasn't editing, I wasn't really doing much of the creative stuff that I'd always loved doing, and I'm a creative person, that is me. But as times changed and as, you know, we grew as a company, I found myself doing a lot of stuff that it needed to be done, and really I was the person that needed to do it, but it certainly wasn't the stuff that I loved doing most. And that started to eat me up, and I ended up in a bit of a position where I didn't really want to do it anymore. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and if I don't enjoy what I'm doing, I find it very, very hard to do it. And the Gaz shoot at Hardwick was the first proper shoot I'd been on in quite some time. It was the tail end of the early spring, so tail end of the winter. I hadn't been out filming for like I say, for quite a while. And after the success of that shoot, it made me realise, one, this was the best kind of content that we could make. We couldn't do anything better than what we'd done there. And it was also the content that collectively we enjoyed the most. I certainly enjoy it the most, and I get the vibe. You can tell on a shoot. When you spend time with people on the bank, when you're in each other's pockets, you get a vibe of you get the vibe of what's going on around you, and we love it. And that is so, so important. And ultimately, sealed the deal. This was the direction that we were going to go in.
I was down at Hook Lake in Hampshire with Stokesy and Dave Robinson, and it was grim, kind of coming out. It should have been warm by then. It was freezing. Remember what this spring was like, absolutely awful. Morale was low. Stokesy was getting, I wouldn't even say he's getting turned over. We were struggling. The fish were eating whatever they were eating. It looked like the shoot was going to grind to nothing. We were putting the effort in as normal, but we needed that result. And as it happens, the result didn't come. But it felt like a kind of pivotal moment because we were running as fast as we could to generate the material. It wasn't coming together, and it was on that trip actually that Elliot told me about his plans to change Cypography. And I remember walking to the top of the lake on the phone, probably had bad signal because that's kind of life on these shoots. And he relayed this, and I've got to admit, I felt a bit shaken by it and a little bit of trepidation about what the future held.
There was probably a period of around about 6 months where I was bouncing lots of ideas around. I actually at one point thought I'd settled on a totally different idea. We were developing a new website, new apps, we had a lot going on. But eventually it just came to the point where it felt like all the thinking was over. I had complete clarity, I think we all did. And if we were going to change our content and the style of what we did, then why not change everything? Why not go back to basics and start everything from scratch? Rebranding, you name it, we wanted to change it so that by the time people began to see the new Cypography, it wasn't just different in one way, it was something totally different.
I'm pretty naive when it comes to the back end running of Cypography, and it's fair to say that if Elliot and Gemma were abducted by aliens tomorrow, I would have a hard time working out what it all means. But in order to get to the team calendar in which all of our shoots are booked, I have to go through the Cypography inbox. And occasionally I would catch sight of a complaint, a member having trouble with payments or whatever it was. And I have to admit, sometimes I worried and took it to heart.
As much as Rich had his concerns, and rightly so, I did too, but having worked doing this for so long now, I've seen these emails coming in. I've seen lots of good and I've seen plenty of bad. That is the way the world works. You'll never please everybody. No one's perfect. And over the years, we haven't been perfect. We've tried to be perfect though. That's the important thing. And that's something I always try to remember is as long as you're doing your best, as long as you're listening to what people say to you and you're doing everything you can to produce the best content and the best service that you can, then what more can you do? Well, the one thing you can do is always push forward. Never be afraid of change and try to keep moving with the times. And we've always done that. Originally, we used to put out a couple of hours of content every month. We had quite a basic website. We had no app. A few years ago, we made a change. We changed our format. We went from monthly episodes where people would pay individually for the content, and we changed to a format that is world-renowned now. It's the typical subscription format where you pay monthly, you get access to all of our content. And that is something I'm sure lots of people are now familiar with in this industry. We were the first, we're not going to be the last, that's for sure, but one thing we will always strive for is to be and remain the best.
As much as the changes to the app and the site were a no-brainer, it was the changes to content that clearly was going to take time to settle in and take time to sort of wrap my head around. However, when Elliot talks sort of passionately about change, and you can sort of see the commitment start to grow across the team. Things started to feel a little bit more real, and once you get to that point, commitment is a lot easier. And once you've committed to a new idea, then with that comes actually quite a lot of freedom. We all felt a new buzz, and it was certainly going to be exciting to see where that took us.
I think everybody has their strengths and everyone has their weaknesses. You know, that is how people work. One thing I feel I've always been blessed with is the want to jump in at the deep end, not to be afraid to do something bold, not to be held back by fears you might have of things going wrong, and ultimately that would lead to where we are now. And I'm not a person that I can't stand still, I can't sit still, I can't do the same thing time and time again. I have to do something new, I have to be excited by what I do, and I believe that that attitude improves everything that you do. If you're always pushing forward, if you're not afraid to take a leap of faith and do something, it's only going to benefit you. And I think that fear of staying the same, that fear of failure, is what has led to where we are now. And underwater filming has everything.
There's always natural drama. When those fish appear out of the gloom, it is so exciting, and underwater filming gives you a completely different perspective on some of the most famous lakes in the UK.
You see what you otherwise never get to see.
There's a real camaraderie about underwater shoots that you don't quite get with other ones, because you're all living together in a tent, often in adverse weather, and cooking together. The tea rounds go on. You get to know the angler a lot better, because frankly there's no better way to get to know someone than to live with them 24 hours a day all throughout a shoot. And in terms of recording documentary, which is ultimately what Cypography is about, I don't think there's a better environment to do that.
The feeling when an angler catches a carp on an underwater shoot it's incredible. On a normal shoot, the angler catches a fish, everyone's happy, of course. When they catch a carp on an underwater film, we are jumping around the swim, everyone's grabbing each other. You know, the buzz of that is completely unrivaled.
It's always fascinating to see how resilient anglers' mindsets are when their best techers is exposed in front of an underwater camera. Now, of course, as we all know, it can go one of two ways. They're either a hero on camera or their head is in their hands.
You always learn something, and the shoots are never the same.
I'm not sure if exciting is quite the right word, but there's a real sense of jeopardy that surrounds switching that camera on, whether that's in the morning or whether that's the first time we switch it on after placing and baiting the camera days before. These are the moments on which the shoots can turn, and you're either going to be really buzzing about it, or you're going to be scraping us off the floor.
The line between success and failure is so fine. So much can go wrong, and it can go wrong so quickly and so easily. And I thrive on that.
I love seeing the cast of characters that are the other side of the underwater camera develop as the shoot goes on. Quite often we get the same carp visiting day in, day out, and that has been one of the really fascinating elements of underwater filming. It's cool to see their characters develop as the shoot progresses, but it's also cool when some new fish turn up out of the blue, especially if they're big.
Everyone loves underwater, whether you're a seasoned carp angler, whether you're new to the sport and you're desperate to learn. No matter who you are, there is something about underwater filming that you just can't get any other way. There's no other way to get that insight into their world like you can from an underwater film. And we are now in a position where we are putting all of our effort into that. We have made over 1,000 videos, and from time to time we will still produce the style of content that you have grown to recognise Cypography for, but it will be on occasion and when the right film presents itself. No longer are we spending an entire month trying to produce 5, 6 big videos. Now all of our effort goes into one project, and that means we can deliver the very best content that we can as a collective. Our films will be the best we've ever produced, and we are going to take underwater filming to a place it has never been before.
There you go, that's a different one. Coming from the
He's
back.
a good one, isn't he? Big mirror.
Could be the 48 again.
Big mirror, that.